So, filmmaking. I think about filmmaking as being something that has a mystical side and a practical side. So, you've all heard the concept of honing your craft, right? Sure. So, when you hone your craft, you are doing something that's very practical, but you spend every day working to improve on a set of skills, to perfect a set of skills. You know exactly what you need to do. But have you ever heard anybody say hone your art? No, it's not really a thing. But how do you hone your art? We think of art as something that is mystical and magical that you can't really put your finger on. You either have it or you don't. So if you don't and you want to have it, what do you do? So with a craft, you can learn your craft, right? So you can practice on a pottery wheel, you can use a paintbrush, you can use a screenwriting software to work on your craft. But how do you transition that into making real art? So I'm going to talk about that from a filmmaking perspective. So who is a filmmaker? What is a filmmaker? That's sort of a really broad umbrella term that can include a producer, a director, a writer. These are typical multi-hyphenates. I'm going to add in an actor because that's me. It's also really common in independent filmmaking that you will have people be more fluid going from the front of being in front of the camera to being behind the camera. So I'm going to include an actor in here. Now, when you look at the definitions of these roles, they're really boring. A producer is somebody who manages and organizes. A director is somebody who supervises actors and a crew. So I think it's a little more mystical and magical than that. So I'm going to share with you my definitions. A producer is someone who makes something out of nothing. So first there's an idea, and at the end there's a film, and a whole lot of things have to happen in between there. And that's pretty magical. A director is someone who sees something that no one else can see. But then when they show it to you, everyone can see it. A writer is someone who finds truths in places that are unexpected. And then an actor is somebody who shows those truths with honesty and vulnerability. So as a filmmaker, there is a lot of blurred lines between these roles when you look at it from this mystical standpoint. And that's all because all of these roles exist to tell a story. So what does that mean? What is your job as a filmmaker? Your job is to serve the story, to communicate, and to connect. So what does it mean to serve the story? I like to think of this like a vase or a water jug, a vessel. Now, a vessel is something that holds something. It can carry something. It's also something that transports something, like a boat. A vessel can also hold life, like the blood vessels in your body. So I think of serving the story as a vessel. As an actor, I I feel this feeling when it's really working, that I'm just a vessel and I'm serving the story by allowing the story to flow through me. I've had that idea in my head probably since I was here at Davis. And I like to carry that concept through to the whole of filmmaking. So serving the story means that you are letting go of ego, letting go of vanity, letting go of the idea of looking cool in order to serve the narrative needs of the story, in order to address the themes, and in order to share the big ideas of what a story is. If that vessel is filled with all your own ideas, how do you get rid of it? How do you mute your ego? So there's a study done at the University College London where actors were given brain image mapping to wear while they were rehearsing. So the expectation of this study was that the self-awareness portion of the brain would actually light up, that the ego area of the brain would actually light up during rehearsal. Well, it's not what happened. What happened is that area actually dimmed. The actors were actually letting go of their egos in order to serve the story. And that is what filmmakers also need to do. And that is what we all need to do as artists. But that is not to say you are just waiting for something magical to happen. We've all heard this before. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Stephen King notoriously talks about getting up and doing your work. In his book on writing, he says, amateurs are people who wait for inspiration to strike. The rest of us get up and go to work. So you do have to be ready for the inspiration to work. You do have to be ready for the vessel to be empty. The actors in the study were professional actors. People talk about writer's flow, where writers are writing and they don't even know where the story's coming from. They feel like the story is coming from somewhere else. They can't do that unless they're already very honed in their craft in order to be the artist. Communicate. This is the next thing we have to do as filmmakers. We think about communicating as being this outward thing, but it's really an inward thing. In order to have something to say, you have to have inward reflection. You are your greatest asset because you are unique. In order to know how you are unique, you have to actually spend time with what that is and reflect on that. So that's what we're going to do together now. This is what I call the Filmmaker's Manifesto. There's a declaration of values, and I am a statement of intent, and then, of course, a call to action. Declaration of values. What do you believe? You might come up with an answer really quickly, but I would challenge you to think on this. Alan Moore, who is a prolific comic book writer, he wrote Watchmen, he wrote V for Vendetta. He talks about writers needing to know what they believe so that they know where they are coming from. You need to have a belief about your morals, a belief about your politics. That's not to say that you have to pick a political side, but you do have to care how the world works and how the world operates and how people interact together. What do you fight for? What would you really, really, really fight for if you had to? Truly, not run away. For me, I didn't know one of the things that I would fight for until I did. And that was a few years ago when I realized that I would fight for women's rights. And that manifested in my art. So I created an anthology with 16 other women. It was a horror, sci-fi, dark comedy to address women's rights. Now I know that's something I would fight for. So you don't always know what you would fight for until the moment comes that you need to fight for it. So think about what you would fight for. What is your aesthetic point of view? This seems kind of silly after we've talked about political and moral beliefs and what you would fight for. But as a filmmaker, as an artist, your aesthetic point of view is very important. How you set up the world and what it looks like is informing the message that you are trying to share. So you have to think about, what is your aesthetic point of view? Okay, so this is the really important part. What makes you unique? Once you answer that question, you're going to have also come really close to answering the second question, which is what makes you relatable. So, what makes you unique? I'm going to use a really, really simplistic exercise to show you how unique you are. Because as it turns out, when you ask somebody this question, the answer is usually pretty generic. It's a list of facts. But we are so much more interesting than just a list of facts. So we're going to do this exercise together. We're going to create a little story from our memory of going to school. We'll use 8th grade so we can narrow it down. It could be a specific day that you remember going to school, or it could be the routine of going to school throughout 8th grade. So now you're going to use your 5 senses. So we'll start with, what do you see? Everybody's journey to school was different. Did you take the bus? Did you walk? Did your dad drive you? Did your mom drive you? Did a friend's parent drive you? What did it look like? What did you see? For me, I live near the ocean. It was early in the morning. Often it was very foggy. That's very specific to me. That's something I could maybe use in a story that gives it a fabric, that gives it a uniqueness. So think about what you see. Okay, now think about what you smell. Did you get in a car where somebody was smoking? Are you on a bus that is filled with layers and layers of junk and gum and candy? Does it smell like exhaust because you're walking on a busy road? Are you in a city? Does it smell like urine on the street? Are you in a rural area where there are flowers growing and it smells incredible? What do you hear? Is it quiet? Is it loud? Is there fighting going on in the background? What does it taste like? I already mentioned I grew up in an area where it's foggy. Sometimes that has a little taste to it. Did you brush your teeth? What did you eat? Are you hungry? What does that feel like? What do things feel like around you? What's the texture of your friend's car that you got into? Are they new leather seats? What does that mean to you? Is the ground hard? Is it a dirt road? Is it hard to walk on? So there are all these questions you can ask about very, very simple ideas. And you realize already how unique your experience is about something that's very, very simple in your life, just getting to school. Now, if you look at the person next to you, they just went through the same questions, right? It's highly likely that your experience of going to school would be different than the person sitting next to you if you told them about it. And the things that are unique about your experience would be the things that would be interesting to that person. Now, also, the thing that is relatable is the container that makes it possible for those interesting things to matter. They also have their own story about going to school. So now you've answered both these questions. You now have ideas about what makes you unique and what makes you relatable, and both those things are essential to telling a story and to creating art. Okay, so now we get to move along pretty quickly. Statement of intent. We already have our juices flowing. Why do you want to create work? What do you want your work to feel like? How do you want people to feel? So why do you want to express it? How do you want people to receive it? Now, if you feel like the first answer you got to is a little generic, ask a second question on your first answer. So if you say, why do I want to create? Because I want to share stories. Then your next question is, why do I want to share stories? Do that 7 times and you're going to have a much more interesting, unique answer for both of these. Call to action. Why do you think you are the person to do the thing that you do? And what makes you qualified to do it? It doesn't have to be, do you have a full resume that makes you qualified? What is the one thing that makes you the most uniquely qualified to do this? So now we have our filmmaker manifesto. I'm a filmmaker who believes, I fight for, my aesthetic point of view is, my unique point of view is. Audiences can relate to I make work in order to. My films feel like. My job is to remind the world. And I know my power is. Here's something really cool. We're going to move this right into connecting. Your filmmaker manifesto is also your operational manifesto. So if you're a filmmaker, you're working on a set, you're a leader. So now you can take that information that you've already done when you've done a deep dive into your own self to create your manifesto and transition it into how you connect with people. You're a leader who? What do you fight for on your sets? What's the overall group aesthetic point of view? What's your unique asset to your team specifically? How can your team relate to you? What can you do to encourage your team? What does your workplace feel like? What is your job to remind the team? And what do you know the power of the team is? So we're already connecting at this level. Connect. We already have all the information on how to do this. Now we want to connect with our audience. Good filmmaking unites the personal with the universal. So we already know the answers to this. We know that the personal is something that is unique and specific. We know that the universal is what is relatable. We already have all the tools to move forward as an artist and as a filmmaker to make a good film, good filmmaking. So in a matter of 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes, you already have a much greater understanding of who you are and how you want to create and present yourself to the world with your art. With that, you have a strong foundation on how to move forward confidently. You don't have to go into your work questioning it. You know your point of view. You know where you're coming from. You know what your power is. So here we are. We land back at the vessel, the vase. Creating is really, really terrifying. You're always questioning, are you good enough? Is your work good enough? Are you good enough? Do you really have something to say? Well, that's a whole lot of ego. We don't really have space for that as artists. We need to clear that concern and make the art. So as an artist, your job is to make the art. The rest of it is none of your concern. So now you have some of the tools and some of the foundation to know that you do make work that is good and matters, that you do matter, and that what you have to say matters. So now you have some of the pieces to continue on a mystical journey as an artist instead of just honing the tools that you need as a creator. Both go together. And I will leave you with the most important piece of this is do not ever underestimate how powerful you are and how powerful your uniqueness is. You are truly your greatest asset. You are unique and you are meaningful. Thank you very much, Davis.